Good morning to you. I'm glad that you found time to being with us today. It is the 11th of May 2022, and here are the latest headlines from across the continent of Africa. We start with the papers from Kenya. The Standard newspaper, How Kalonzo Goof Cost Him the Presidency. Book reveals that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto offered Kalonzo the presidency because a coalition of the beaten Raila Odinga in 2013, because the coalition would have easily beaten Raila Odinga in 2013, but Musyoka statements on ICC iked the duo, who quickly changed their mind. That story is on page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I think that's that new book by CS for Defense Aiden Duale. And why bill on more taxes is likely to pass easily. Ranks reject Treasury's big tax plans. Toyota and Mercedes merge units. Okay. Toyota and Mercedes. Okay. Trump charged 644 million Kenya shillings for sexual abuse. And then church slams Ruto on jobs as data shows ethnic imbalance. Oh, poor church of Kenya. Daily Nation. Bishops fault Ruto on taxes and state jobs. That is the main story. A new job, a party, and a body, a family's agony. And then the Star newspaper, Raila's coalition moves to purge Azimio rebels. The People Daily, parties file demands. Big athletic stars jets in ahead of exciting races. The Business Daily, Ruto to spend 100 billion Kenya shillings on new trains, SGR revamp. Very interesting. Please, if you're Kenyan, go on their website or get a copy of the Business Daily and get the details there. That's quite something. Cooperative Bank boss pockets, how much is this? 287.5 million Kenya shillings bonus, and then banks sue to fight 15% tax on hedging deals. Okay, Taifa Leo, our leading Kiswahili newspaper. Maaskofu waamka. What is happening? I don't know. And then just down there, Yesu wa Tongaren ahojiwa na DCI alivyolipata jina. Okay. And by the way, the name Jesus, when you go to Latin America, that is a normal name. Jesus, I think. They use that is just a normal name. Like James and John and all these other names. Okay, let's head over to Zimbabwe. The Newsday, ED backtracks on looting law. The Herald, President meets Council of Elders. This is from Zimbabwe as well. 13 distressed farms rescued. ZACC investigates 9 parastatals. I think that is the Zimbabwe's, is it Corruption Commission or something like that? So it investigates 9 parastatals. The Daily News as well. This is also from Zimbabwe. Government feels heat over price hikes as Pali summons Ntuli to explain crisis. And then South Africa's power cuts hit record levels. And the Daily Monitor, motorists face fresh fines. This is from Uganda. As police eat penalty cash. Okay, I'll take that again. Motorists face fresh fines as police eat penalty cash. What do you mean police eat penalty cash? When you break the law, the traffic law, and the police fines you on the spot, they never take this money, or what's really happening? Okay, so internal investigations at the Ugandan police force have unearthed grand theft of express penalty money amounting to 5 billion Uganda shillings, with top officials accused of fiddling with the online payment system. The Ugandan Revenue Authority records show many car owners have defaulted and must clear the tickets. So you're given a ticket that is genuine, and then you pay, but the account in which you're paying to is not the right account. So as much as you feel you've paid the penalty, but the official's record shows that you have not paid because this money is being swindled and is going to a few accounts. And to be honest, I don't think this is a problem that is uniquely Ugandan, because I think we've had of similar cases here in Kenya. So it is very problematic, and that's why the government is really trying to digitalize its services and payments in immigration and other sectors. But you can see these unscrupulous people still finding ways to beating that system. So, but I guess we still have to keep working on it. and perhaps create, platforms that are not easily corrupted in this manner. And so I think that is unfair, especially for the motorists who paid for that fine, and then you're walking around not knowing that that did not reflect. And maybe you meet another police officer later and you're arrested. And sometimes I don't know if you're issued with a receipt, so you can't even confirm. So it's quite something. Government holds O-level vocational exams. We also do have that on the front page of the Daily Monitor. And the main pictorial there, that is President Museveni and First Lady Janet. I think they were attending the burial of former state minister who was murdered. The Daily Trust, this is from Nigeria. Doubts over Buhari's fresh $800 million loan request. Why is he requesting loans while he's just counting days for him to leave office? I think at this point there are certain things that should not be happening, appointing and all these things. That should be left to the incoming administration. Tinubu left for Europe to reduce distraction, spokesperson. I have this story in details, and obviously I have so much to say about it. NBC lacks power to impose fines on broadcast stations, that is according to the court. EFCC arrests Buhari's ex-power minister over 22 billion naira fraud. And Northwest deserves Senate presidency. Okay. The Guardian from Nigeria still. More cracks as APC House, in quotes, divides against itself. Tinubu's overseas strip starts reactions. Buhari seeks Senate approval to spend $800 million palliative loan. He should not be given that. How many days does he have? Today is the 11th. The inauguration is on 29th. What does he want to do with this money? $800 million. That's a lot of money. And I hope nobody really thinks it's a good idea to pass this. The Senate should not approve that. Dangote, Elumelu hail NNPC's performance under Kyari, and more trouble for students as JAM's biometric verification falters. All right, the Punch from Nigeria still. Dissent in APC, aspirants demand fresh zoning formula. APC zoning creating tension cannot guarantee unity. That is according to Izunaso. And North Central senators write APC chairman decries zoning exclusion. 4 men on trial for killing a cousin, and Lagos arraigns Eze Digbo for terrorism. And NNPCL needs huge investment to meet demand. That is according to Dangote. The Citizen from Tanzania, DRC leader hints why he prefers SADC to EACC, and I have that in details, and I also do have a lot to say about that. Tanzania appointed to UN advisory body. Okay, that's good. Benjamin Mkapa, is that the son of the former president? No, Benjamin Mkapa Hospitals offers, that is a hospital. The former president is Benjamin Mkapa. What am I thinking? Benjamin Mkapa Hospital offers sickle cell patients fresh hope. I think there's a hospital that was named in honor of the former, who is now late, president. And I think I was actually reading that news elsewhere. It will now offer a treatment on sickle cell, bone marrow transfer, or something like that. So that is good for the people of Tanzania. Nipashe as well from Tanzania, hatimaye familia mwanafunzi wa UDOM yafunguka. Okay. All right, and let's look at some papers from the UK. The Daily Mail. What is so moral about not stopping people smugglers? It's a big question there. And the Daily Telegraph, Whitehall blob holds repeal of Brexit laws. And 2-week wait for deliveries in Royal Mail postal desserts. The Times, I've got what every woman needs. What is that? Okay, NHS plans to send more doctors into GP surgeries, and migration law is morally unacceptable, says Welby. That migration law, and also the bringing of migrants to Rwanda, a deal that was entered between the UK government and Rwanda. But now, if this Archbishop of Canterbury, I believe, Welby, This has been happening for a long time now. Why didn't he not raise issues from the start? The way he's been vocal in giving the church position on matters to do with LGBTQ and things like that. This is something that has been ongoing and in the public knowledge. Archbishop, why have you taken so long for you now to come and say, so this is not morally right? Okay, but nevertheless, he has joined in the debate. Okay. The Daily Mirror, hidden toll of long COVID. 2 million Brits with symptoms and 400,000 need specialized care. We go inside pioneering clinic dealing with the epidemic fallout. And the Daily Express, your attack on small boats law is wrong, Archbishop. Or somebody has corrected the Archbishop there. Okay. But the small boat, the ones that try to cross over the English Channel. But anyway, still also with the Rwandan deal also, all of that together. The Guardian, morally unacceptable, will be in stinging attack on migration bill. Okay, and the Financial Times, still from the UK, Sunak ready to curb students' family visas as net flows grow, and shares in activist Ican's group dive on news of inquiry by US prosecutors. And the Daily Record, this is from Scotland, reign of terror by toxic neighbors. The Independent, Mirror publisher apologizes to Harry at hacking trial. Editors including Piers Morgan. I'm really not surprised. Authorized use of private investigators as millions spent snooping on Charles, Diana, and celebrities. And now Archbishop joins chorus of criticism for morally unacceptable small boat policies. Very well. We'll look quickly at some newspapers from the US. The Wall Street Journal. Inflation eases, keeps federal government or Fed pause in play. Santos charged with 13 felony counts. That is George Santos. And if you've been following, he's a representative from a district in New York. If you've been following his story, he is habitual liar. He lies about where he went to school. He lies about things that he has done. He lies about the games he played and the team he made in college that he never went to. He never went to college anyway. He lies about everything, even the most silliest of things. And so the charges have been brought against him. And I think that is a story that I have been following. And I will see how that happens there. Quandary for home buyers, nobody's selling. And then Israel-Palestinian militants trade fire in escalating conflict. All of this on the Wall Street Journal, and FD advisors support over the counter pill used for birth control, and prosecutors probe. Okay, I think I've already read that. The New York Times, Santos is indicted as inquiry claims 3 finance schemes. And he also lied about the owners of a certain dog. I don't know. Raised money for it. He never gave it. It's just ridiculous. Some of these charges, if you think about it, some of these things he lied about and conned people. I think the 3 cases about that. And immigrant influx strains open armed Chicago. The Washington Post, hidden dials. Biden dials up pressure on debt, charges, chases, and fear in rural Texas. Homelessness surges in D.C. suburbs, studies says, and at least at border as rule expires. The USA Today, victims too often suffer in silence. U.S. sees alarming surge in shootings. GOP debt plan cuts benefits to hungry. The New York Post, it pays to be a Biden. That's a very catchy headline there, New York Post. Foreign clients looking to buy influence funneled millions through shady entities to Joe Biden's. Okay, I guess that is another scandal looming. Houston Chronicle, chaotic end to rule expected at border. 25 years for killer of Black Lives Matters protester. Indictment against New York Santos accuses him of litany of crimes. The Guardian, this is the US edition. How finding a home in America became absurdly expensive. Geez, you think, especially in certain states, It's extremely expensive. It is 20 minutes past 10 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. You are now up to date with the latest headlines from Africa and indeed from a few others across the world. So now let's get into the detailed news bulletin. A very good morning to you. We start from the DRC. And the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has accused East African forces deployed to fight rebels in his country of working with the enemy. Felix Tshisekedi made the remarks on Tuesday during a visit to Botswana, where he welcomed the planned deployment of Southern African forces as a replacement. Addressing journalists in Gaborone, Tshisekedi, who spoke through an interpreter, said there are issues within the EAC regional force deployed to fight the M23 rebels in the east of DRC. The DRC president did not specify how the East African forces are working with the rebels, but said his government has had to reevaluate its operations in the east. The DRC president said he is also concerned over Kenya's decision to appoint a replacement commander for the regional forces without consulting authorities in Kinshasa. This came after the commander of the East African Forces, Kenyan General Chef Nyaga, abruptly quit the DRC mission at the end of April. Tshisekedi said the planned deployment of Southern African Community Development (SADC) troops is welcome, particularly at a time when the tour of duty of some East African regional forces is coming to an end. Botswana's President Mokgweetsi Masisi, speaking on Tuesday night during a state banquet organized for Tshisekedi, said there is a need to find a solution to challenges in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And then we head over to Nigeria. And President-elect Bola Tinubu has departed for Europe in what his aide described as a working visit and part of a final preparations for his assumption of office on the 29th of May. This is the second time Mr. Tinubu will be traveling out of the country since he was declared president-elect in March. He returned to Nigeria on the 24th April after a 4-week vacation in France. In a statement on Wednesday, his spokesperson, Tunde Rahman, said Mr. Tinubu will use the opportunity of the trip to fine-tune the transition plans and programs and his policy options with some of his key aides without unnecessary pressures and distractions. During the visit, the president-elect will also engage with investors and other key allies, hoping to convince them of Nigeria's readiness to do business under his leadership. He is scheduled to return shortly for preparations towards his official swearing-in. His aide said Mr. Tinubu's victory is being challenged at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, which started hearing on Monday. The outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari has extended his London trip for dental treatment after he attended the King's coronation last week. And in Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa has withdrawn an information ban on how the state procures medical and other supplies. It followed an outcry after the government's Gazette, the official publication notifying the public about its actions and decisions, announced last Friday it was no longer going to make the information available. Critics accused the government of fostering an environment that allowed corruption to flourish. President Emerson Mnangagwa has now distanced himself from the controversial notice, saying it was placed without authorization and the government was committed to transparency. Now, early on Wednesday, government spokesperson Nick Mangwana defended the ban, saying it was to allow the purchase of emergency supplies and critical equipment repairs without a long-drawn procurement process. So this was the government spokesperson. Okay, let's just finish up with the rest of the stories and then we shall come back to that story very shortly because I do have a lot to say, just like I did yesterday. We head over to Guinea. Riot police in Guinea have clashed with anti-Junta protesters, firing tear gas in the capital Conakry. Groups of young people were hurling stones at officers and burning barricades. Footage filmed by Reuters news agency now shows. According to AFP, at least 10 people were injured in the confrontations. Demonstrations also took place in the northern town of Labi and in Zerekore in the southeast. It reports an alliance of opposition parties, trade unions and civil society groups called for peaceful demonstrations on Wednesday and Thursday. Amongst their key demands is a call for talks to fast-track a return to civil rule. Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, the commander of the country's special forces, overthrew President Alpha Condé in a coup in September 2021. And from Rwanda, a former Rwandan military policeman has gone on trial in France, where he lived under an assumed identity for many years for alleged crimes committed during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Philippe Hatage Kimana obtained a refugee status in France and then French nationality under the name Philippe Manier. He had worked as a university security guard in France and fled to Cameroon in 2017 when he heard a complaint had been filed against him. AFP reports he was arrested in Yaoundé and extradited to France the following year. According to the 170-page indictment seen by France's Le Monde newspaper, he is accused of actively participating in the killing of hundreds of ethnic Tutsis town in the south of the country. He has denied the charges and will face life in jail if found guilty. The trial's main hearing, when witnesses testify, is scheduled to take place next month. It is the fifth such trial in France of an alleged participant in the genocide. The killings of around 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus took place over 100 days in 1994. And back to Nigeria, but this time in the UK, the Supreme Court in London has ruled that it is too late for a group of Nigerian claimants to sue the oil giant Shell in relation to an offshore spill more than a decade ago. Lawyers representing nearly 30,000 people in Niger Delta have been trying to sue Shell, saying the oil slick polluted their land and waterways, damaging farming, fishing, drinking water and religious shrines. An estimated 40,000 barrels worth of crude oil leaked from a tanker at Shell's Bunga field in 2011. The Supreme Court upheld rulings by two lower courts, which found the claimants had brought their case after the expiry of a 6-year legal deadline. And we end from Sudan. Ferocious fighting between paramilitary fighters and the military took place in the northern suburbs of Sudan's capital residence. And the battles in Bahri echoed those that took place in central Khartoum in the first days of the conflict, which erupted more than 3 weeks ago. The paramilitary Rapid Support Force RSF group said in a video that it had shot down a military fighter jet in Bahri. This is yet to be confirmed independently. Since the start of the conflict, RSF fighters have been in control of much of Khartoum, with the army attacking them from the air. The army now says it is making good progress on the ground and maintains it is gaining the upper hand in Bahrain. From Omdurman, where some of the witnesses live west of Khartoum, they said they witnessed black smoke across the city and they could hear the sounds of heavy shelling and artillery. Other residents in Omdurman say shells fell at the famous Al-Mahdi Mosque, and a huge market in the area was seen overrun by looters. Any goods that was found at the Libyan souk, from clothing and mobile phones to computers and food, was looted. Some traders there have been open for business despite the fighting. With people short of food and money, widespread looting broke out on Wednesday afternoon, targeting all shops, whether open or closed. Okay, and that is the latest news from across the continent of Africa. Thank you all so much for watching. James Friday and Dundi and Kariz Kim and the rest of you. I appreciate your patronage this morning. All right, so let me just put that story of Sudan on the side. Let's just go straight to Nigeria, because Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Let's just spend just a little bit of time there, and then I have also some things to say about President Felix Tshisekedi's remarks. Okay, so President-elect Bola Tinubu has left for Europe. Yesterday I was just here, letting you know that President Buhari is still holed up in London because, according to him, he could not find a good doctor, a good dentist in Nigeria, despite the fact that even those hospitals he's visiting in the UK, in London, a lot of them are filled with qualified doctors from Nigeria and nurses. I made that case here yesterday. UK had to stop the brain, what do you call it? Had to stop getting more doctors and nurses from Nigeria because of the issues to do with brain drain. Because, you know, in Africa, a lot of these countries don't pay really some of these professions, and when they find lucrative, better deals out there, they go. So such is the case of Nigerian doctors and nurses in Nigeria, of course in Nigeria, Zimbabwe, a few of them from Kenya and elsewhere. So it's not a new phenomenon. That's what happens. But even as the other countries seek to get our specialists from this continent that we don't appreciate, Muhammadu Buhari, the president of Nigeria, in his thinking as the president and the head of state, over the government that funds some of these universities and programs in the Nigerian universities, does not have enough confidence in the same systems that the government oversees, especially in the public sector, because I feel like they are the best. They produce the best, especially when it comes to medical trainings and things like that. Okay, you know, I know that for Kenya, this public universities, the University of Nairobi, and now I see more university, and I see other public universities. Those are the places you go for. Initially, it was only University of Nairobi that was offering medicine training, but now I see others have opened up. But any person who has gone through a public hospital and received their training there, they are the best. Anywhere, they are the best. But because of the lack of good pay and all that, you find that there's a level of lethargy or of some sort when you visit these public hospitals. Not because they're not able to do their jobs perfectly or they're not qualified, but because of the conditions that they have to deal with. So that really discourages them to giving their best and offering treatment and taking care of the patients that visit these institutions. But I'm not, that is not to sanitize the bad service that sometimes they give. But they are the most qualified. They're the most qualified. Anybody who has gone through a public education training in certain areas, they are the most qualified. And that is where anybody would go for. Any hospitals, anybody that seeks to get the medical staff. Okay, now let's fast forward it. So Buhari is in London. He extended his visit after he attended the King's coronation that happened on the 6th, on Saturday. I don't know if he went for the party that happened on Sunday. I saw Lionel Richie performed and all these stars, Katy Perry, and I don't know any of her songs, but the rest of the stars that performed, and it was such a great event. I don't know if Buhari attended. I'm not sure if any of the other heads of state, especially from Africa, or other, dignitaries attended. I think that was just a UK celebration of their king. Fine. So instead of coming back home, where he has urgent things to deal with, Buhari decides that no, this will be a good time to have my dental work in London. While you have people being kidnapped from churches, you have crises, you have power problems. I guess some of these problems are so used to that it's really not an emergency for Buhari. So Nigerians have been on their own for a very long time. And that's why you see, even in his very last days, he continues to exhibit an attitude that he really does not care. And that position that you gave him as a president, that is not really a priority. And I'm not just saying this. This is out of the experience and out of how President Buhari has been responding, especially to certain issues that are of importance and are urgent to Nigerians. And that's why, even at this very important moment, when he's supposed to be back at home, helping with the planning of the transition and he's still the president and taking care of some issues that requires his attention, he'd rather just have a dental visit. This could not wait after 29th, when you're no longer the president. Your dental work or whatever it is you're having done there in London, this was so important. Could not wait until you're relieved. You'll have all the time in the world. Surely your teeth can wait. I don't think it was such an emergency. Okay, so they're saying the procedure had started and so he had to continue to take another 5 days. Come on. While Nigerians are dying, while Nigerians are dealing with other issues that requires the president to step up. So that was a disappointment. And I spent so much of my time talking about that yesterday. So I'll just move on to now the president-elect Tinubu, who now also has traveled to Europe. They're not saying which country. I think the last time was it in London or Paris? When he said after the votes and after he was declared the president, he traveled he left Nigeria after a 4-week vacation in France. Can you imagine? No, he returned to Nigeria on the 24th of April. He was away after he was declared the president-elect. He left, went for 4 weeks. This is the time you're supposed to be sitting with your people, fine-tune your agenda. Nigerians, I'm almost feeling sorry for you guys, because you're having trouble with the outgoing president who was aloof and out of touch with what has been going on in Nigeria. And now this incoming one, I don't know if he's going to be any different. Okay, so the 4 weeks he said he needed to rest after a hectic electioneering period. So he left. He was away for 4 weeks. Okay, and he came back on the 24th of April. So now he's leaving, and you know, their spokespeople, they're not very. I don't think they're the best. They can't even craft a better lie or create to us a better situation that we can really understand and that really would make sense even for the people of Nigeria. So this is what the spokesperson, Tunde Rahman, the spokesperson of President-elect Tinubu, said. We will use the opportunity. The president-elect will use the opportunity of the trip to fine-tune the transition plans and programs and his policy options with some of his key aides without unnecessary pressures and distractions. So he wants to be away to fine-tune his whatever it is he needs to work on and his policies and all that without the unnecessary pressures and distractions. So that means these unnecessary pressures and distractions, that will be Nigerians. And these are the people that you'll have to be dealing with. So every time you feel like you're unable to handle an issue, will you be running away to Europe? Because it seems to be you and Buhari, that is like your most favorite place to go. To run away from pressures and unnecessary distractions, because that is what you're essentially saying. When the heat will become too much in that kitchen, or in the country in Nigeria, when the issues will start piling up, and when you resume your responsibility as the head of state, you should understand that that position is very demanding. And there are a lot of things right now that are not working in Nigeria. And so even as a section of Nigerians are not in support or are not in support of the results of the presidential elections, but at the end of the day, if you are sworn in as the president, then all Nigerians expect for you to have a solution and your government to put in strategies and all that to respond to the issues that they would wish their government to respond to. So if this is your way of handling issues, whenever you feel like you're supposed to work on something important or respond to something important, your response will be to run away to Europe and to relax and to run away from unnecessary pressures and distractions, then Nigerians again are going to be on their own. And I doubt that it's going to work on these options, and even that whatever it is, policy options, and even that 4 weeks is spent relaxing. There were rumors that he had gone to see a doctor. There are rumors. I mean, watch Tinubu talk. Watch him have a full press conference. If he goes more than 3-5 minutes, the 6th minute, you feel like this person is about to fall asleep right here. You know, if somebody don't shake him a little and just, bring some life, he seems tired. Maybe it's because of age, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but surely just judging and seeing how he even walks and all that, as much as age is a factor. Hold on. How old is President Olusegun Obasanjo? Have you seen how he walks and how he operates? Very healthy and all that, and he moves with speed and he's always on his toes. Watch him. So Bola, when you look at him, he's not 100% okay. The age factor is there, but he's not 100% okay health-wise. And outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari also has had issues with his health. has had issues with his health that has costed Nigerians a lot of their time, because when he's supposed to be in the country to deal with issues, he's out there seeking for medical services, which is not a bad thing. But if it's getting in the way of you performing your responsibilities 100%, and it's really something that you must pay attention to because your health is important and you can't perform to your maximum, sometimes the best thing to do is not put yourself in these leadership positions. So now he's leaving, and according to his spokesperson, he's going to Europe. They've not mentioned the country, or perhaps I did not get that. He's going to work on transition. You're supposed to work on transition plans back at home. But now, the person you're supposed to be working on transition with is not even at home. So maybe you're going to meet Buhari in London. I don't know. That is just me thinking out loud. since it's not home, so that you can work on the transitional plans. I'm laughing, but this is a very serious matter. But it is the ridiculousness of this, and how you have an outgoing president and an incoming president who seems to have their priorities just upside down. Both of you are supposed to be home. Buhari was supposed to schedule for that dentist appointment after the 29th. He could have traveled after the inauguration, after he's handed over the instruments of power. He could have left that afternoon. But I think this is a moment that is very important for the country, that both of you are supposed to be home, working on the transition plans. I know your teams are working on it, but just be there, because Nigerians need your presence in the country because of the things that are ongoing in Nigeria. But I guess that is not very important for you. So anyway, so during the visit, the president-elect will also engage with investors and other key allies, hoping to convince them of Nigeria's readiness to do business under his leadership. So I'll be waiting to see. And why can't those investors come to Nigeria? Why are we always the ones going and seeking for these people? Why can't those investors come? Organize for their visit. Let them come. And after you've fine-tuned, because you can't say you're going to fine-tune the transitional plans and programs and fine-tune your policy options and then talk to investors at the same time. You need to fine-tune that and work on that and have strategies and things in places and know exactly some of the things that you want to achieve or the agendas, and see if we're bringing these investors, in what areas would we need them to invest in. You have to take your time and do that. But you're fine-tuning this at the same time, and also you're saying you're going to talk to investors while you've not even fine-tuned whatever it is that you're supposed to be talking to them about. See, that is the confusion that has started marking perhaps the new leadership of Nigeria there. So let me just leave that over there. But of course, I'll be checking to see, especially I'll be waiting to see if at all we'll have some photos, some evidence to show really these meetings and these investors. I think that is something that I would like to take a look at now. Let's go to Zimbabwe. There's a story I shared with you yesterday, and it was over an email or sort of a press conference that had been issued about the procurement and tendering of medical equipments and all that, everything in the medical that is required in the Ministry of Health. And that press statement said that now these procurements will be done privately, and that will not be, the details will not be made public and will not be available for public scrutiny or for public or access. Public will not be able to access it. And I thought, what a ridiculous thing to do in a country that is fighting and dealing with corruption, in a country that is reeling and is really suffering. And now you're creating a situation where corruption is going to be very thrive, and a few people will benefit. And that is what is called rent seeking. When you have just a section, a tendering process that cannot go through a public scrutiny, and you have just individuals being awarded or coming in and selling to the government of Zimbabwe, if you allow us to bring this equipment. I think that happened also under former President Uhuru Kenyatta when those equipments came in and they were given by force to the counties. It's rent seeking. It doesn't go through the whole vigorous competitive process. It's just one person comes, convinces the government this is the right thing to do. Usually politicians are related to that, and then they're given the tender, they get to supply. So whether you get to use those things or not, it does not matter. Whether the country loses the money or not, it doesn't matter. They've made their money and they're out of there and they're gone. How are you going to maintain those things or whatever, that is your problem. And whether they sold you things that were even almost obsolete, that is your problem. They've made their money, they're out of there. So the government of Zimbabwe wanted to assume this attitude. And I think this was crafted by a few people in the government. And you cannot convince me President Emmerson Mnangagwa did not know about this. Okay, so let me read the press statement yesterday from the Office of the President and Cabinet. Never mind, whatever that ban or that communication had been done by the spokesperson of the government. So there's no way he would have gone in public to make these pronouncements without the direct authorization of the government that he is purportedly speaking on behalf. The government has to tell you something to say or give you something to say for you to go out there and say it. But now the same government is coming out just perhaps an hour after we covered this story yesterday. And this is what it says from the Office of the President and Cabinet. His Excellency, the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, has been made aware of some document gazetted as General Notice 635 of 2023, purporting to place the procurement of certain goods outside public scrutiny on grounds of national interest. Yes, I talked about that in length yesterday. Upon further investigations, it has come to light that the so-called government gazetted notice is a nullity, having been published without authorization and without the signature of the Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, as is the norm. While further investigations are underway, government wishes to advise the public that, on the instruction of His Excellency the President, the document in question has been rescinded as it has no standing at law in policy and in terms of set government procedures. It thus should be disregarded. Government remains committed, as ever, to managing a transparent public procurement policy and process as required by the laws of the country. Signed by Dr. M.J.M. Sibanda, Chief Secretary, Office of the President and Cabinet. And then that has been stamped. The date is on the 10th of May 2023. Okay. So perhaps my big question this morning is, who is running Zimbabwe? Who is in control of that country? President Mnangagwa. How do you, because I don't believe that you did not know. I do not believe that you do not know. I doubt that the government spokesperson will come out and make pronouncements of this magnitude, because this is a big deal. We are talking about the health sector of Zimbabwe, a very important sector in any country, a sector that has suffered, a sector that is on its knees because of the economic situation of Zimbabwe. And now someone decides to make these statements that will further cause trouble in this sector. And your spokesperson, first of all, if this was a lie, or this was not the right position of the government, that spokesperson should not even be in the office. Is he fired? The person who authorized this, why are you investigating? I think such a communication, it's very easy to know where it has come from. Very, very straight. I don't have it here, the official communication, but I do know the details of it because we talked about it yesterday. I would have wished to know which office it came from. But according to your spokesperson, Nick Mangwana, That was the official communication from the government, which you, President Mnangagwa, is the president. So if you are so unaware that such a communication, somebody would think it is, somebody would just bypass you and print it in the official government gazette without your knowledge, and then you get to hear of it the same way I heard of it and talked about it, and you want us to believe that is the truth. I don't buy that. The government was trying to see and perhaps get a reaction and what Zimbabweans will say about this matter, because you know it's out of order and it is not in line with even the constitution in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has so many things and problems that it is trying to solve and deal with right now. Like, why do you need to add any more to that already? You already have too much on your plate. So why are you creating this unnecessary, problems? And this just goes to show how uncoordinated, how this government operates. There's no clear point of power here, because if such an important communication that will greatly affect a very important ministry in the government, a communication will go out without your input, without you seeing it, and you read about it the same way I'm reading about it here in Kenya, that is a problem for me. So I ask again, who is in charge of Zimbabwe? Who is in charge of Zimbabwe? And why are you investigating? The person who issued that, I think it's very clear. Nick Mangwana should tell you, where did he get that communication? Who told him to speak on behalf of the government? If we were to go with your line of defense that you did not know, and this thing, purporting this and this and that, why is he still in office? Why is he waking up this morning still as the spokesperson of the government? Why? The person who crafted that letter, if they're still in government, why are they still there? Have you fired anybody? That's why I'm saying you can't convince us, because that is such a huge omission, that is such a huge blunder, that anybody responsible for such carelessness and for usurping that level of powers, that is a person that should be, what you should have done, that communication, after it was done, and then below that, you should have said, and, the government spokesperson, Nick Mangwana, he will not work. He's not a government spokesperson anymore, pending investigations, and the person who crafted that should have been included in that communication that came from your office yesterday. And so that's why I'm not buying this, because this is a very big blunder that should have costed somebody their work. It's not a small thing. Very reckless. Okay? So whoever who gives themselves power, if we were to go with your defense, that person is supposed to be out of office. They're not supposed to be waking up this morning and heading to their office, out of work completely. Find them something else to do, but they should not be serving. But since they've not been fired, then we need to know who is in control of Zimbabwe. President Mnangagwa. Things cannot just be happening helplessly like this, and you are so unaware. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all, and I am not convinced until I hear Nick Mangwana was fired, or whoever who gave him that letter, whoever who authorized, because this gazette, official gazette notice, it has processes in which it's supposed to go through. So whoever who authorized it to be printed without following the due process, that person is supposed to be fired too. So until all these people are really out of there, perhaps transferred in other sectors, then I'll stand with my words yesterday, and some of which I've added today, which is who is in control in Zimbabwe, and also what made you think that was something that would work in Zimbabwe, and who told you that was going to be a good idea, and who are your advisors, Mr. President? They're getting into a lot of troubles. You're having people who keep leaving you vulnerable. the advice they're giving you, the kinds of things they do around you. You know, watching that investigation by Al Jazeera, I sympathized with you, and I sympathized with the people of Zimbabwe, and I sympathized with your government. Because some of the people that you have trusted with these positions are just out there to enrich themselves. They're playing you like a fiddle, and they're benefiting on behalf, at the expense of the people of Zimbabwe and of your government. I'll not get into the part you played according to that investigative piece. So you need to relook at the kind of people you have as advisors, the kind of people you've trusted in certain positions in your country, and the kind of people who help you in running the day-to-day, activities of Zimbabwe and the people of Zimbabwe. Otherwise, they'll keep getting into trouble, and you'll keep getting into trouble, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So you can't tell us you did not know about this Gazette notice, Mr. President. That is a defense that we will not buy. You are supposed to be in the know, especially on such an important matter. You are supposed to know. So that has exposed you again to how maybe you're not even in touch with the things that are happening in your government. And that is a worry. So get a grip. I think that's what I will say, and I'll just leave that there. All right. I don't know if I want to get into. I look at President Tshisekedi's sentiments later in the afternoon. I think I'll have just a whole show talking about that, because it's a lot some questions that I need to raise with President Tshisekedi, and maybe it's about time the East African Community Regional Forces came back home. I absolutely believe that, but I'll leave that for 3 p.m. There were clashes in Guinea yesterday. Shortly, I have about 4 minutes or so. There were clashes in Guinea yesterday after protesters who are protesting the military rule in Guinea, and of course the Guinea police met them with a lot of tear gas, and there was some violence there that happened in Guinea. The groups of young people were hurling stones at officers and burning barricades. Footage filmed by Reuters news agency shows at least 10 people were injured in the confrontations. Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya is the one who led in overthrowing President Alpha Conde. There's a time that happened in September 2021. I think there's a time, because they're very quiet. They're not. There's not so much happening in Guinea, so I don't know what their plan is, and I don't know when they're planning to a transition. I don't know what their plans about that is concerned. I know there's a lot of activities in Mali and Burkina Faso with the military junta, and I think that is because the Russian mercenaries are there. So there's a lot of attention towards these two countries. But in Guinea as well, remember President Alpha Conde was removed from power, and so I don't know what the plans of this military junta has in Guinea, or how and when they plan to hand over power to the military. But obviously the young people there are not very happy with their overstay. And so yesterday they were out in the streets in Conakry protesting, and I think demanding for a transition to civilian. If there's anything they can learn, these countries, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, if there's anything they can learn, is what happened in Sudan, and their continued staying and insisting on staying in power is putting these countries at a very precarious situation. It is a very slippery slope. We say that so much about Sudan as people seeing the cracks and everything else starts to play out. It took time, but it did not take too long, and now you see the country has been plunged into chaos. So that there should be a very good case study, that even with them, the more they insist on staying in power, and the more this protest will start, and they will gather a storm, and it will be problematic, and things are becoming very hard because and there's certain things that they benefit in terms of trade and all that as a member state, they can't benefit anymore. And at the end of the day, the people get to suffer the consequences. So it will get a time that it will be too much, and they will start coming out to the streets on a regular, and you'll not be able to get a grip of the situation. So what will happen is a section of the army will decide, let's remove Zimbabwe and his people, and let us come up and try to pretend as if we are on the side of the people and we are advancing the interests of the citizens. The same way RSF now is trying to play us into believing that they are in support of civilian transition and all that, while we know that is not true, because they work together. The RSF leader Hemedi and the army leader, they work together in removing the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, you remember? Okay, so that will be the situation here. And then Guinea and Mali and Burkina Faso will be plunged into a civil war that will become very difficult for them to get out. So if there's a lesson they can learn in the recent events that have happened, specifically in Sudan, is that the early you leave the streets and you go back to the barracks, the better and more stable your country will become. And then you can help in safeguarding the rest of the process as you retreat back and let the civilians take back their country and organize and support in whichever way you can. But you should not in any way overextend your stay as the heads of these countries. Otherwise, you're setting up this country for instability. Absolutely. Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, we cannot say those countries are stable. They're not. Who is going to start talking about investments with the military junta? Well, you don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know if there's another counter coup being planned. So, you know, it is calm, but it's not stable. You can't say these countries are stable. So they need to do the right thing and just hurry up with the process of transition. I think that would be my advice there for Mamadi Doumbouya and the rest of his counterparts, these juntas in these other countries. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. Hopefully we can meet here at 3 p.m. East African time. I'd like for us to peruse through, not peruse through. We are going to do a dissection. We are going to dissect some of these sentiments by President Felix Tshisekedi. While he visited, he was hosted by President Mogwetsi Masisi of Botswana. He had so much to say, criticizing EAC and all the sacrifice that this region has made. But let me just stop here. We'll have that conversation at 3 p.m. East African time. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Bye-bye.